Hello, kia ora, g'day, I'm Philip Duncan from Weather Watch TV on YouTube with your Australia-only forecast through until Sunday, and not as busy as we kick off this week. We've got the remnants of what was Cyclone Zelia. Now that's falling apart. A low pressure system hanging around Western Australia for a couple more days, bringing thunderstorms here and there and some downpours, mostly around the Goldfields Esperance area at this stage. There is a high pressure zone just to the south of Western Australia. That is going to bring a bit of a more refreshing change to some of you in the days ahead. But before that happens, you got more of that heat and humidity being dragged down by the cyclone. There's also some low pressure up around Darwin. It's not a storm, it's just low pressure producing thunderstorms in that sense. But most of the tropical energy is actually east of Australia in the days or the weeks ahead. So we're going to be talking about that as we move on, because there could be a low in the Coral Sea forming off the coast of Queensland later this week, which could be worth keeping an eye on. As far as wind is concerned, you've got windy weather still around the low pressure system that was Zelia. Otherwise, the winds aren't very strong. Perhaps a bit of a southeasterly breeze in the outback and over the deserts. And the only other breeze is around this coastal zone here, where if you're perhaps in some of the more exposed areas, maybe a little bit windy. Otherwise, nothing too much going on. So let's get into the forecast. Here we are for Tuesday into the afternoon and evening, and we've got severe thunderstorms around parts of Queensland, mostly into the far north of Queensland, and also around the top end, and maybe brushing the Kimberley as well. Otherwise, the next other area with wet weather is down around the remnants of Zelia here. So places like Ayers Rock, Uluru might be seeing some severe thunderstorms as you go through the day, and that hot, humid weather pushing down over much of Queensland, over the entire Northern Territory, and a large portion of Western Australia. South Australia, dry for the most part, except for that wet weather in the very northwest there. Otherwise, it is dry for you again with that windier airflow. And I hate to say this, but for those who do need rain in South Australia, and certainly a large portion of Victoria, not a lot of wet weather on the way coming up this week. This week, high pressure to the south is dominant, and the next low behind it looks too far south to bring you the wet weather. So another dry week on the way. A couple of coastal showers around, but that's not going to do very much. Most of the wet weather is up in the tropics, but also perhaps a little bit of wet weather still with a southerly coming in there for Tasmania after what was not the hottest of weekends for you. As we go through to Wednesday, still got that southwesterly or southerly flow over Tasmania. That's going around the high pressure zone that's moving in over the Great Australian Bight. Still a bit windy though around Victoria, South Australia. That east to southeasterly you've had off and on all summer is still here for you. Along the eastern side are coastal areas of New South Wales and coming up just around Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast, just northwards there. You might be seeing some afternoon build-ups, perhaps some thunderstorms here and there. Otherwise, rainfall doesn't look too large in that zone. And again, seeing severe thunderstorms in far north Queensland and around the Kimberley, not so much in the top end on Wednesday afternoon. And the remnants of Zelia still producing a few thunderstorms into the southern parts of Western Australia. You've also got showers forming as that high pressure system to the south of you starts to track further along and away from Western Australia. And that allows on Thursday for that remaining low pressure zone to kind of sink properly southwards. And that's, by the looks of it, the last day of that really hot, humid weather being dragged down. You can see the red line coming well south of Kalgoorlie, getting close to Perth. That just means that that tropical low, the ex-cyclone, just sort of pulling down some of that more tropical weather for you. Tropical in the sense of the heat more than anything else. We do see thunderstorms possibly around New South Wales and going into Queensland on Thursday afternoon. They are a bit more hit and miss, but this little zone here around New South Wales, well, it's not that little. I mean, it goes from Sydney all the way up to the border of Queensland, but this is the zone where you may be seeing some severe thunderstorms, and on top of that, the northerly winds starting to crank up. So it could be quite windy weather all the way from sort of northern central parts of Queensland all the way down over the A.C.T and into Victoria. So watch out for potential wind warnings as a result of that on Thursday. If you're living in Tasmania, the winds finally ease for you on Thursday as the high rolls on in. And similar story on Friday as the high pressure zone tracks on by, moving quite fast. That high pressure zone, it's zipping out towards New Zealand quite quickly. And so as we go into the weekend, now you're starting to see a bit of change happening. First of all, we'll start with the western side of the screen, the left-hand side. Look at this storm down in the Southern Ocean. So that's going to send up a southerly that's going to ease that humidity and the heat to some of you. mostly in the southwestern corner here, but that includes Perth as we go through into Friday. Still got low pressure out around the Goldfields area though. And isolated thunderstorms around parts of Queensland and the top end and Katherine. But again, that burst of rain still likely around Port Macquarie, Grafton area. Could be some thunderstorms in the mix there, along with that windier weather pushing down around the A.C.T, Canberra going into parts of Victoria. Not overly windy, but just windy. You're right, you notice it in exposed areas. Now, as we go into the weekend, that slightly cooler change coming in for parts of Western Australia and the south there won't be noticed on the other side. So as the low spins, cooler air comes up around Albany there in Western Australia. On the other side, going past places like Whyalla and coming down towards Melbourne, that's where you're seeing that hotter weather. So hotter north to northwesterly winds. Northerly winds are blowing across Victoria, across New South Wales and over Tasmania on Saturday. So a windier day, maybe some showers and downpours in the mix there. You might get a thunderstorm if you're lucky for some rain. Otherwise, it's dry and you've got showers blowing off the Tasman Sea north of Sydney. So that's those areas again like Grafton up to Brisbane and to Gladstone, which I incorrectly said Gladstone the other day. I'm sorry, Gladstone. Now, the other area to keep an eye on is in the Coral Sea. Low pressure here, starting to deepen. It's not a cyclone, but it's worth keeping an eye on because as we go into Sunday, it starts to sure look like one. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Now, I was talking in the New Zealand video that I did today about the large amount of low pressure that is along the tropical region, but most of it is out here over the Pacific Ocean where there are at least 7 or 8 low pressure zones that go right off the screen out towards French Polynesia. So obviously the ones out near French Polynesia you don't have to worry about in Australia, but these ones in the Coral Sea and around Vanuatu, they're worth monitoring. So we'll be watching those very closely. We'll have more details about those storms or low pressure zones in our next Australian update. That will be out on Thursday. We will see you then. Have a great week ahead.